Share this video with your friend, you know, the one that always saying, miniature painting is too darn expensive. Now, miniature painting doesn't have to be terribly expensive. Sure, some of the paints that miniature painters use can be a little bit pricey. Thanks, Citadel. But you don't have to use miniature paints with flashy gamer names in order to enjoy the hobby of miniature painting. In this video, I'm going to show you how I go to the local Walmart here and I pick up all the supplies I need to paint a beautiful miniature from Broken Anvil Miniatures for less than $20. The mini we're going to be painting in this video is Bartholomew Hadden from Broken Anvil Miniatures, and I just horribly slaughtered that name, didn't I? I don't blame the braces if that's okay with you all. Broken Anvil is a great studio of miniature artists that pump out dozens of high-quality miniatures, and you can get the STL files for these miniatures each and every month on their Patreon program for just $9 US. Now, this video is not sponsored. I want to make that perfectly clear. Hashtag not sponsored. I just really love the Broken Anvil Miniatures and their lineup of different releases each and every month, and something I look forward to firing up my 3D printer for every single time I get that preview image on their Discord. Broken Anvil also recently launched a very successful Kickstarter campaign to fund their new miniature skirmish game called Rivenstone. And as soon as I get my hands on some of those figures, we'll be making a video about it right here on the channel. So if you want to know more about that game, hit the subscribe button and make sure you turn the notifications on so you don't miss those videos. Just as soon as I get my hands on those miniatures. There'll also be a link in the description down below where you can get this particular STL file for the miniature we're going to paint today so you can paint along at home right after you get back from your shopping trip to Walmart to pick up all these supplies. The plan to paint this miniature is going to be to keep the paint job very, very simple. We're going to be working with craft paints and cheap synthetic brushes, which means we're not going to be able to get overly detailed or apply advanced techniques such as wet blending to get smooth blends in this miniature, so keeping a very simple color scheme and paint job is going to be in our best bets. We're going to be starting off with a white spray-on primer, and then we're going to be working through our three-step process of base coating, washing, and highlighting to get this miniature painted. But first, we got to run to Walmart and get some supplies. Alright, now that we're back from Walmart, let's see what we got. The first item we snagged was this can of spray-on white primer. It was just under $7, which I thought was a really good price. And I know it says it's for metal, but I have a feeling it's going to work out just fine. Next up is our paints. I got a good selection of colors as they were mostly all just 54 cents a bottle for these big 54 milliliter bottles. So we got red, white, blue, a nice peach color we're going to use for our skin tone, burnt umber, a pale daffodil which reminds me an awful lot of ice yellow from Vallejo, and black. I also found this decent metallic silver for just under $2 for a 54 milliliter bottle, so of course I snagged that up too because our miniature has got some iron armor and a sword on him, so we're going to need some metallics for that. So overall, it's not up to a very high price tag already. We also got brushes and a palette. The palette was 97 cents for this cheap plastic white palette, and the brushes were just under $2 for a 5-pack of different size brushes. Altogether, this all came to $17.51, which leaves us about $2.50 left over. So if we wanted to, we could head to the dollar store and get ourselves a toy to repaint if we needed to. But since we got this really nice 3D printed mini here to paint, we're going to go ahead and paint that up instead. Alright, our first step in our painting process is to apply our base coat. And because I like to start from the inside and work my way out, we're going to be starting with that skin tone. First, I want to be putting down a undercoat of this red color that we picked up to give the peach a little something more to interact with once we put it on the skin and give it a little bit more of a lifelike appearance. Now, one thing that really surprised me with these paints is how well they thin down. We've all heard the horror stories of craft paint thinning down and becoming really grainy and leaving a grainy texture behind, but I didn't find that to be the case here with these paints. They all thinned down really nicely and they went on very smoothly. In fact, I think I might have thinned them down a little too much in some cases. The colors also mix together really well. Now, you don't see it here on screen, but I was able to mix up our red and our blue colors together and get this really nice, deep, almost plum purple shade, which normally when I use miniature paints and I mix colors together, I really don't get a good result. It turns out into this muddy, grayish, brownish, just absolute mess. But these craft paints from Walmart, they mixed up real nice. I was able to get this really nice purple that I'm going to use for this miniatures jacket. Alright, it's time to do some shading now. And what I normally do is I normally use an oil wash for this step, but we don't have that option this time because we're only using what we got from Walmart for less than $20. So in order to come up with a wash, I took the black acrylic that I picked up at Walmart and I thinned it down with a lot of water. I mean, a lot of water. So in this palette, I basically filled a whole cup up of water and added in about 3 to 4 drops of this black paint, mixed it all together, and once I got to a point where I was happy with the consistency and the flow of it, we just went ahead and applied it just like any other acrylic wash. The black paint flowed into the recesses just fine, and we got this really nice shading and definition on this metal chainmail here. The last step that I wanted to work on for this miniature was to take this bag and kind of blend that highlight down to the shade tone a little closer. Right now, it is a very stark transition. It's a very harsh transition. I wanted to tie it in a little bit more. I took some burnt umber onto my palette and I thinned it down to a glazed consistency. And this is where I started to notice the first problem with these paints. And I guess I'm not even sure I would call it a problem, or more of like a characteristic of how these paints behave. Once I got down to a glaze and I loaded my brush up and I dabbed off the excess moisture on the paper towel, like you normally do for glazing, and I went to apply the glaze to the bag, I noticed the pigment kind of just slid around on top of that layer and didn't want to seem to go on smoothly or evenly. In fact, it took me a little longer than I anticipated taking to go ahead and get that smooth, even glaze that I was going for. But in the end, I did get it, so I don't know if I can call this necessarily a problem, but just be aware that if you're using these paints, that glazing might pose an extra challenge or two. So before running this experiment, I never would have thought it possible to go up to Walmart, grab some paint off their shelf, paintbrushes and a palette, come home and paint up a decent looking mini that I'd be more than happy to put down on my D&D table. I have no problem taking this miniature and putting him down on my battle mat during one of my D&D sessions, and I think the paint job came out pretty dang good. In fact, if I was a brand new painter and this was my first experience, I'd definitely be coming back to paint more minis because this was a very enjoyable experience. Even as an experienced mini painter like me was able to get enjoyment from this project. In fact, once I got into it, aside from the glazing issue, I didn't really notice much of a difference between these cheaper craft paints and the Army Painter and Vallejo paints that I normally use on my minis. So the fact that I can go up to Walmart and for 54 cents get a 54 milliliter bottle of paint that works well, it thins nicely, it mixes well. At this point, I don't think we can say that miniature paint is an expensive hobby anymore. I mean, I just showed you how we can paint a miniature up for less than $20 US. So if you're using the excuse that miniature paint is too expensive to give it a try, well, guess what? You don't have that excuse anymore. Go to Walmart, get some paints, find a miniature to paint somewhere, and sit down and give it a try. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and since you're still watching it, you must have. So do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you've watched a couple of videos so far and you're liking the content, and don't be afraid to share this out to your non-miniature painter friends who you think might benefit from picking up a mini and giving painting a try. Be sure to hit that bell notification so you know when the next video comes out, and I'll see you all in the next video.